Welcome to Heritage Garden Wisdom. I'm Frank Miller, and I need you to understand something happening right now in preparedness communities across the country. Certain plants have become underground currency among experienced preppers. You offer cash, they decline. You offer silver, they say no, but mention you have heirloom seeds they need, useful skills to trade, or other rare plant varieties, and suddenly they're interested in negotiating. These aren't exotic species that are difficult to cultivate. These plants grow easily, produce prolifically, and survive with minimal care. Yet preppers guard them, trade them only within trusted networks, and treat them like contraband. The reason reveals everything about what actually holds value when conventional systems fail, and it's not what mainstream preparedness marketing wants you buying. Make sure you're subscribed to Heritage Garden Wisdom right now. We cover the resources that create genuine security versus the gear that just creates the illusion of preparedness. Hit that subscribe button because we release content weekly about assets that matter during actual crisis scenarios, not hypothetical disasters. The like button is right there. Use it because this information needs to reach people who are serious about building real resilience instead of Instagram-worthy gear collections. Share this with anyone questioning what actually has value when currency becomes worthless. Let me explain exactly why experienced preppers have developed an entire parallel economy around specific plants and which plants have achieved gold standard status in this underground trading network. Welcome to Heritage Garden Wisdom. I'm Frank Miller, and I need you to understand something happening right now in preparedness communities across the country. Certain plants have become underground currency among experienced preppers. You offer cash, they decline. You offer silver, they say no, but mention you have heirloom seeds they need, useful skills to trade, or other rare plant varieties, and suddenly they're interested in negotiating. These aren't exotic species that are difficult to cultivate. These plants grow easily, produce prolifically, and survive with minimal care. Yet preppers guard them, trade them only within trusted networks, and treat them like contraband. The reason reveals everything about what actually holds value when conventional systems fail, and it's not what mainstream preparedness marketing wants you buying. Make sure you're subscribed to Heritage Garden Wisdom right now. We cover the resources that create genuine security versus the gear that just creates the illusion of preparedness. Hit that subscribe button because we release content weekly about assets that matter during actual crisis scenarios, not hypothetical disasters. The like button is right there. Use it because this information needs to reach people who are serious about building real resilience instead of Instagram-worthy gear collections. Share this with anyone questioning what actually has value when currency becomes worthless. Let me explain exactly why experienced preppers have developed an entire parallel economy around specific plants and which plants have achieved gold standard status in this underground trading network. Traditional currency derives value from scarcity and collective agreement about worth. When systems collapse, that collective agreement evaporates and currency becomes worthless paper. But certain plants possess intrinsic value that transcends any monetary system. They produce food continuously. Unlike stored supplies that deplete, these plants generate nutrition year after year. They reproduce themselves. One plant becomes dozens of plants through vegetative propagation, creating exponential multiplication. They provide trading capital. Extra plants become assets you exchange for other critical resources, skills, tools, different plant genetics, preserved foods, future services. They represent access. Possessing these plants signals membership in preparedness networks and demonstrates serious long-term thinking versus casual prepping. They create independence. You're not dependent on functional supply chains, operating stores, or stable currency to feed yourself. This is why experienced preppers trade these plants like precious metals. In the economy that exists after the current system collapses, certain plants may actually be more valuable than gold or silver. You cannot eat gold, but you can eat perennial vegetables that produce for decades, and you can propagate those plants to create both food security and trading assets simultaneously. That's wealth that makes sense in any economy, functional or collapsed. Plant number 1, tree collards, Brassica oleracea var. Acephala. Tree collards occupy the pinnacle of the prepper plant economy for multiple converging reasons. Perennial longevity. Tree collards live 10 to 20 years, producing continuously throughout that lifespan. Compare this to annual vegetables requiring replanting every season. Year-round production. In mild climates, tree collards produce edible leaves 12 months annually. In cold climates, they produce from early spring through late fall. Propagation restriction. Tree collards propagate exclusively through cuttings. They do not produce seeds. This creates inherent scarcity. You must obtain cuttings from someone who already possesses the genetics. Exponential multiplication. One cutting becomes a mature plant within 2 years. That plant produces dozens of cuttings annually that can be rooted to create more plants. By year 5, your initial cutting has become 20 plants. By year 10, aggressive propagation yields 100 plants, all producing food continuously, all generated from that single initial cutting. Economic analysis. Tree collards function as an appreciating asset that generates continuous dividends. You acquire one cutting through trade. Within 2 years, you have abundant greens for personal consumption. You also have dozens of cuttings to trade, creating more food security for others while acquiring resources you need. Nutritional density. Tree collards are exceptionally nutritious, high in vitamins A, C, K, calcium, iron, and fiber. They're among the most nutrient-dense vegetables you can grow. Climate tolerance. Tree collards tolerate heat, cold down to approximately 20 degrees Fahrenheit, poor soil, drought, and neglect far better than annual vegetables. During collapse, tree collards provide continuous nutrition without external inputs, but they also provide something equally valuable: trading capital. Someone needs food security. You provide a cutting that becomes their permanent food supply. That's value transcending any currency. This is why one tree-colored cutting is worth more in the prepper economy than a $100 bill. The cutting creates permanent food production. The money becomes worthless paper. Plant number 2, Daubenton's kale, Brassica oleracea var. Ramos. Daubenton's kale is another perennial brassica achieving high value in trading networks. Lifespan, 5 to 10 years of continuous production. Propagation. Like tree collards, Daubenton's kale propagates through cuttings, creating scarcity and trading value. Redundancy value. Preppers who possess both tree collards and Daubenton's kale have 2 separate genetic lines of perennial greens. That's food security through diversity. If disease affects one variety, you have backup production from the other. Cold hardiness. Daubenton's kale tolerates cold temperatures better than tree collards, surviving down to 10 degrees Fahrenheit in many cases. Production characteristics: heavy leaf production, mild flavor, excellent nutritional profile comparable to tree collards. Plant number 3, perennial multiplier onions, Allium cepa var. Aggregatum. Multiplier onions are heavily traded because they provide permanent onion supply without purchasing seeds annually. Multiplication mechanics. Plant one bulb in fall. By summer, that bulb has divided into 8 bulbs. Plant those 8 bulbs the following fall. By the next summer, you have 64 bulbs. The progression continues exponentially. Perpetual harvest. You harvest some bulbs for immediate use while replanting others for continued multiplication. You never run out of onions. Storage characteristics. Multiplier onions cure and store like conventional onions, providing preserved food through winter months. Trading value. A single multiplier onion bulb is worth substantial value because it represents infinite future onion production through natural multiplication. Varieties. Different regional varieties exist with varying characteristics. Collecting multiple varieties provides genetic diversity and adaptation to different growing conditions. Plant number 4, Egyptian walking onions, Allium x proliferum. Egyptian walking onions are bizarre, fascinating, and extraordinarily valuable for permanent onion production. Growth characteristics. These plants produce aerial bulblets at the top of flower stalks instead of seeds. When the stalks become heavy with bulblets, they bend to the ground and the bulblets root. The plant literally walks across the garden. Perpetual propagation. You harvest some bulblets and underground bulbs for food, while allowing others to root naturally. The plants spread, multiply, and produce food perpetually. Year-round availability. Green tops are edible like scallions throughout the growing season. Underground bulbs harvest in summer. Aerial bulblets harvest in fall. Zero maintenance. Once established, Egyptian walking onions require absolutely nothing. They spread, multiply, and produce food perpetually. Plant number 5. Perennial culinary and medicinal herbs. Specific herb varieties are traded within networks, particularly selections bred over generations for exceptional productivity and potency. High-value herbs include oregano varieties, particularly Greek oregano and Italian oregano with high essential oil content. These are medicinal, preservative, and valuable for trade because everyone needs them. Thyme varieties. English thyme, French thyme, and medicinal thyme varieties selected for flavor and medicinal properties. Sage varieties, garden sage, purple sage, and golden sage varieties that are hardy and productive. Rosemary. In cold climates, cold hardy rosemary varieties are particularly valuable. Why herbs achieve trading value? They're perennial and produce for decades once established. They're medicinal, useful for treating infections, digestive issues, respiratory problems, and numerous ailments when pharmaceutical medicines aren't available. They're preservative, essential for food preservation without refrigeration. They propagate easily through cuttings and divisions. Specific productive varieties are superior to common nursery plants and worth seeking out. Plant number 6, Jerusalem artichokes, Helianthus tuberosus. Jerusalem artichokes, also called sunchokes, are traded, though less formally because they're easier to acquire commercially. Production characteristics. One tuber planted in spring becomes dozens of tubers by fall. The multiplication is aggressive. Some consider them invasive. Calorie density. Jerusalem artichokes produce substantial calories per acre. They're one of the few perennial vegetables providing significant caloric content. Storage. Tubers store in-ground through winter. You dig them as needed, providing fresh food during months when other vegetables aren't available. Trading dynamics. While common varieties are available commercially, specific selections bred for superior flavor or reduced digestive issues are guarded and traded within networks. Plant number 7, fruit tree scion wood for grafting. Scion wood from proven productive heirloom fruit trees is traded like precious commodities. Understanding the value, a scion cutting taken from a productive heirloom apple tree that's been bearing abundant crops for decades represents 50 years of future fruit production from that proven genetics. Scarcity factors. Many exceptional heirloom varieties exist only as a few remaining trees. Getting scion wood from these trees means preserving rare genetics and acquiring known productivity. Trading networks. Scion exchanges happen through organized events, online forums, and informal networks. People guard their best varieties and share them selectively. Varieties particularly valued. Heirloom apples selected for storage, flavor, disease resistance, and productivity. Heirloom pears, plums, cherries, and other tree fruits with exceptional characteristics. Plant number 8, hardy kiwi vines, Actinidia arguta. Hardy kiwi cuttings are traded because these vines produce for 30 to 50 years once established. Production timeline. Hardy kiwis take 3 to 5 years to begin bearing fruit, but then produce abundantly for decades. Fruit characteristics. Smooth-skinned kiwis about grape-sized, sweet, and highly nutritious. One vine produces dozens of pounds of fruit annually at maturity. Propagation. Cuttings from proven female vines, hardy kiwis are dioecious, are particularly valuable because you know you're getting a productive fruiting plant rather than a male pollinator. Cold hardiness. Hardy kiwis survive temperatures down to -25 degrees Fahrenheit, making them viable in cold climates where regular kiwis fail. Getting a cutting from a proven productive plant means acquiring 50 years of fruit production. That's extraordinary value from one small cutting. Plant number 9, cold hardy fig varieties. In cold climates, specific fig varieties that produce reliably despite freezing winters are particularly valued. Climate challenges. Figs are naturally warm climate plants. Most varieties die in cold winters. Cold hardy selections. Certain varieties, including Chicago Hardy, Petite Negra, and others, survive Zone 6 winters and produce fruit reliably. Propagation ease. Figs root easily from cuttings, making them simple to propagate and share. Production characteristics. Established fig trees produce abundantly, dozens to hundreds of figs annually depending on tree size. Trading dynamics. In warm climates, figs are common and easily shared. In cold climates, proven cold hardy varieties that actually produce fruit are rare and traded carefully within networks. Plant number 10. Comfrey root divisions, Symphytum X Atlanticum. Comfrey occupies unique status. It's shared generously within permaculture and prepper communities, particularly specific varieties. Variety importance. Bocking 14 comfrey is sterile and doesn't spread invasively, making it superior to wild-type comfrey that spreads aggressively through seed. Medicinal applications. Comfrey has been used for centuries treating wounds, broken bones, sprains, and inflammation. The common name knit bone references its traditional use accelerating bone healing. Nutritional applications. Comfrey leaves are edible in moderation and highly nutritious, though internal consumption is controversial due to pyrrolizidine alkaloids. Permaculture applications. Comfrey is a biomass powerhouse. Cut it repeatedly throughout the growing season for mulch and compost material. It mines minerals from deep soil and brings them to the surface through its leaves. Longevity. Comfrey lives for decades once established. A single root division becomes a large, productive plant within 2 years. Section 3. The pattern connecting all these plants. Every plant achieving gold standard status in the prepper economy shares specific characteristics. They're perennial or self-perpetuating. Annual plants requiring replanting every season don't qualify for this economy. The value comes from plants producing for years or decades. They provide significant value. Whether food, medicine, or practical utility, these plants solve critical needs. They propagate easily. Creating more plants from one source is essential. This is what transforms one acquisition into exponential multiplication. They're not readily available through normal commerce. Either they're genuinely rare or they propagate through cuttings and divisions rather than seeds, limiting commercial distribution. These plants represent wealth that appreciates over time and reproduces itself. That's why preppers trade them like precious metals, because in the economy they're preparing for, these plants function as currency backed by intrinsic productive value. In most areas with significant preparedness populations, informal networks exist operating below mainstream awareness. Trading venues include plant swaps, community events where people bring divisions, cuttings, and starts to trade. These events are gold mines for acquiring rare and useful plants. Preparedness expos. Larger events often include plant exchanges or vendors selling unusual varieties. This is where you meet serious growers with rare genetics. Online groups, permaculture forums, prepper groups, and homesteading communities have sections for plant trading. People post what they have and what they're seeking. Private networks. Established preppers know others in their region. Trading happens through direct communication within trusted circles. Trading dynamics. Trades are almost never for money. They're plant for plant or plant for other valuable resources, including heirloom seeds, knowledge and training, useful tools, preserved foods, and future services. The economy operates on barter and mutual benefit. Both parties leave with assets that produce value over time rather than conducting a transaction where money changes hands. Ethical dimension. Many preppers believe these plants, particularly heirlooms preserved for generations, shouldn't be commodified. They should be shared within the community of people who will preserve them and propagate them. Selling them for cash feels wrong because it treats living genetics like disposable commodities. Trading them with people who understand their value feels right because it ensures the genetics continue being preserved and propagated. Commercial nurseries sell what generates profit through repeat purchases, annual vegetables that people buy every season, hybrid flowers that don't reproduce true from seed, forcing continued purchases, plants that fit the consumer model of gardening as a recreational hobby. But tree collards, multiplier onions, and other plants in this category don't fit that business model. They're too permanent. Once someone acquires them, they never need to purchase again. They can propagate infinite plants from that one acquisition. From a business perspective, that's terrible. Businesses want recurring customers, not one-time sales that create permanent independence. So plants that make people independent don't get promoted commercially. They remain obscure, known primarily within networks of people seeking food security rather than recreational gardening. That obscurity makes them even more valuable to people who do know about them. The knowledge becomes a form of wealth, understanding which plants provide genuine security versus which plants commercial systems promote. Strategy 1. Connect with local plant swaps. Many communities host seasonal plant exchanges. Bring whatever you have to offer, even common herbs or vegetable starts. Participate, build relationships, and express interest in learning. Often, experienced growers will share cuttings or divisions if they see genuine interest and commitment to propagating. Strategy 2. Join online communities. Permaculture groups, prepper forums, and homesteading communities often have plant trading sections. Arrange trades and be willing to ship cuttings carefully packaged. Build your network beyond your local area. Strategy 3. Attend preparedness and homesteading events. These gatherings often include plant exchanges or people selling unusual varieties. Talk to vendors and other attendees. Express serious interest in learning. Network building at these events leads to future trading opportunities. Strategy 4. Trade value beyond plants. If you don't possess rare plants yet, offer other value, skills you can teach, labor you can provide, knowledge you can share, tools you can lend, preserved foods you can trade. The prepper economy values useful contributions and useful people. Demonstrate you're serious and people will trade with you. Strategy 5. Propagate aggressively and pay it forward. Once you acquire plants, propagate far beyond your personal needs. Those extra plants become your trading capital. The culture is based on generosity within the community. People shared with you, you share with others. But be selective about recipients. Share with people who value the plants and will continue propagating them. Here's a specific example of how this economy functions in practice. You acquire tree-colored cuttings through trading. You root them and establish 5 plants. Over 2 years, those plants mature and you take cuttings, establishing 20 plants total. You now possess far more than you need for personal food security. Those extra 15 plants are your productive assets. Someone in your network needs food security but lacks tree collards. You trade cuttings for something you need. Maybe they have a productive apple tree and you acquire grafting scion wood. Maybe they have chickens and you trade for fertile eggs or young birds. Maybe they have skills like welding or carpentry and you trade cuttings for training or future services. Your tree collards have become currency. But unlike currency that loses value through inflation or system collapse, your tree collards continue producing. You can take more cuttings next season. Your capital reproduces itself continuously. That's the ideal form of wealth. Assets generating continuous returns without depleting. The plants aren't the ultimate wealth. The network is. The relationships you build with other preppers who think long-term and value living systems, those relationships are the actual gold. The plants are the medium through which you build those relationships and demonstrate your values. When collapse comes, whatever form it takes, the people in these networks will help each other. They'll trade food, skills, and resources. They'll provide mutual security. They'll rebuild community in the aftermath. And it all started with trading plants that commercial systems ignored. That's why tree collards and these other plants are traded like precious metals, not because they're absolutely rare, but because they represent membership in a network of people building genuine resilience. They're the price of admission to a parallel economy that functions on different principles than the mainstream economy, an economy based on abundance, mutual aid, and long-term thinking. If this information revealed an entire economy you didn't know existed, share this video with someone who needs to understand what actually holds value during crisis. Drop a comment telling me if you've participated in plant trading or if you want to start building these connections. I'm Frank Miller with Heritage Garden Wisdom, and I want to know who's building wealth that matters when conventional systems fail. The plant's experienced preppers trade like gold, not for rarity, but for what they represent: permanent food production, propagation potential creating exponential multiplication, trading currency that reproduces itself, and access to networks of people building real security together. That's the underground plant economy. That's wealth that makes sense when nothing else does. Get connected, start trading, build your living assets. And remember, the best wealth is wealth that grows itself and connects you to people who matter when everything falls apart.